When she disappeared, the cameras never came, because some stories don't sell. July 12, 2023. A 24-year-old woman vanishes without a trace. Her family pleads for help. Her friends organize search parties. Her community posts flyers on every corner, shares her photo thousands of times online, begs anyone with information to come forward. But the local news runs one 30-second segment. The national media, silence. CNN, nothing. Fox News, nothing. MSNBC, nothing. The morning shows that love a good missing persons case. They never mention her name. Her mother appears at press conferences to empty rooms. Her face, young, beautiful, full of life, should be on every screen in America. Instead, it's barely on any. Why? What makes one missing person a national obsession and another an invisible statistic? The answer is uncomfortable. It's about race and class and the stories we're trained to care about. It's about which victims we consider innocent and which we assume must have done something to deserve their fate. This is the story of Essence Porter, a nursing student, a daughter, a friend, a woman who disappeared and whose story the media decided wasn't worth telling. This is about the systematic erasure of Black women from the narratives we construct about who deserves to be saved. And it's about the deadly consequences of that erasure. Because when the cameras don't come, the resources don't come, the tips don't come, the pressure on law enforcement doesn't come, and the chances of finding someone alive, they drop exponentially. Her name was Essence Porter, and this is why you never heard about her. She was 24 years old, born and raised in North Philadelphia, the oldest of 3 children. Her mother, Patricia Porter, worked 2 jobs to put food on the table: custodian during the day, home health aide at night. Her father hadn't been in the picture since Essence was 5. Essence was the first person in her family to go to college. She was in her 3rd year of nursing school at Temple University. Her grades were good, 3.4 GPA. She worked part-time at a CVS to help with expenses. She volunteered at a community health clinic in her neighborhood on weekends. She had dreams. She wanted to be a pediatric nurse. She wanted to open a clinic in North Philly that would serve the community she grew up in, because she knew what it was like to grow up without access to good health care. She wanted to make her mother proud. She wanted to show her younger siblings that making it out was possible. She was 5'4". She wore her hair in long braids. She had a bright smile that her friends said could light up a room. She loved R&B music, reality TV, and taking selfies with her friends. She was, by all accounts, a normal 24-year-old woman working hard to build a better life. July 12, 2023, a Wednesday evening. Essence finished her shift at CVS at 9 p.m. Her coworker, Maria Rodriguez, watched her leave through the front doors. Essence waved goodbye, said she'd see Maria on Friday for their next shift together. She never made it home. Her apartment was a 15-minute walk from the CVS. She'd made that walk hundreds of times. The neighborhood wasn't great, North Philly rarely is, but it wasn't particularly dangerous either. People knew her. She knew them. Somewhere between the CVS and her apartment building, Essence Porter vanished. Her mother, Patricia, started to worry around 11 p.m. Essence always called when she got home from work. Always. It was their routine, a quick call to let her mom know she was safe. When Patricia's phone didn't ring, she called Essence, straight to voicemail. She called again, and again, and again. At midnight, Patricia called Essence's friends. Had anyone heard from her, seen her? No, no one had. At 1 a.m., Patricia called the police. The officer who took the report was polite but not particularly concerned. She's an adult, probably staying with a friend. Give it 24 hours. Most missing persons turn up within a day or 2. But Patricia knew. A mother knows something was wrong. By dawn, Essence's friends were out looking for her. They walked the route from CVS to her apartment. They checked the parks, the stores, the places she might go. They found nothing. No sign of her. No one who'd seen her after she left work. Her phone was off or dead. Calls went straight to voicemail. Her social media had been silent since 8:47 p.m. when she posted a selfie from her CVS shift with the caption, "Almost done. Then home to finish studying for my exam tomorrow." That exam was in pharmacology. She'd been studying for weeks. She was prepared, excited even. There is no way she would have just not shown up. Patricia filed a missing persons report the next morning, brought a recent photo, Essence smiling in her nursing school scrubs, brought her daughter's class schedule, work schedule, the names of all her friends, everything that might help find her. The detective assigned to the case seemed sympathetic. He assured Patricia they'd do everything they could. He took down all the information. He said he'd be in touch. Essence's friends made flyers. They posted them all over North Philadelphia, on telephone poles, in store windows, at bus stops. Her face looked out from hundreds of pieces of paper. Missing Essence Porter, 24, last seen July 12th wearing CVS work uniform. If you have any information, please call. They created a Facebook page, Help Find Essence Porter. They shared her photo on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. The posts were shared thousands of times within the Black community. Find Essence started trending locally. Her mother went on local news, Channel 6, Channel 10. She sat in uncomfortable chairs in television studios and begged for help finding her daughter, begged anyone who knew anything to come forward. Her voice broke as she described Essence's dreams, her ambitions, her beautiful heart. The segments ran once, maybe twice, 30 seconds of airtime, then nothing. No follow-up coverage, no updates, no breathless breaking news alerts, no experts brought in to analyze what might have happened, no search parties organized by news stations, no reward funds established. Just silence. Meanwhile, Essence's mother and her friends kept searching, kept posting, kept calling the police for updates, kept hoping that somehow, miraculously, Essence would walk through the door and this nightmare would end. Days turned into weeks. The police investigation seemed to be going nowhere. The detective stopped returning Patricia's calls. The media moved on to other stories. The flyers faded in the sun and rain. And America never knew Essence Porter's name. But here's what makes this story so devastating. While Essence Porter was missing and being ignored, another woman disappeared, and her story was very, very different. 6 days after Essence Porter vanished, on July 18th, 2023, another young woman went missing. Her name was Madison Caldwell. She was 23 years old, white, blonde, from an affluent suburb of Philadelphia called Gladwine. She was a recent graduate from Villanova University. She just started a marketing job at a Center City firm. She disappeared after a night out with friends at a popular bar in Old City. She got into an Uber around 11 p.m. The Uber driver said he dropped her off at her apartment building, but security footage showed she never made it inside. Somewhere between the Uber and her front door, Madison Caldwell vanished. Within 24 hours, her disappearance was national news. CNN broke into programming with a breaking news banner. Anderson Cooper dedicated a segment to her case. They brought in former FBI profilers, former prosecutors, private investigators. They analyzed every detail of her last known movements. They interviewed her friends on camera, her coworkers, her college roommates. Fox News ran hourly updates. They showed photos of Madison, professional headshots, graduation photos, vacation pictures of her smiling on beaches and ski slopes. They described her as a bright young woman with her whole life ahead of her. They called her disappearance every parent's worst nightmare. MSNBC assigned a correspondent to follow the story full-time. They set up cameras outside the police station, outside her apartment building. They reported on every development, every lead, every theory. The morning shows, Good Morning America Today, CBS This Morning, all covered it. They brought on her parents for tearful interviews. They displayed the police tip line number. They urged viewers to share her photo. Social media exploded. Find Madison trended nationally. Celebrities shared her photo. Influencers made posts about her disappearance. True crime podcasters dropped everything to cover the case. A reward fund was established within days. It grew to $100,000. Corporate sponsors contributed. Strangers donated. Everyone wanted to help find Madison Caldwell. The Philadelphia Police Department assigned a full task force to her case. The FBI got involved. Dozens of officers were dedicated to finding her. Every lead was pursued. Every tip was investigated. And 9 days after she disappeared, Madison Caldwell was found. Alive. Confused, dehydrated, disoriented, but alive. She'd apparently had some kind of mental health crisis, wandered off and ended up in a neighboring county. She was reunited with her family. The media celebrated. It was, they said, a miracle. The coverage of her safe return was almost as extensive as the coverage of her disappearance. News anchors expressed relief. Commentators praised the police work. Madison's parents appeared on morning shows to thank everyone who'd helped bring their daughter home. It was the happy ending America loves. Now let me be clear. I am glad Madison Caldwell was found alive. I am glad her family got her back. No one should have to experience the nightmare of a missing child, regardless of race or class or anything else. But here's what I want you to understand. While Madison Caldwell's disappearance was getting 24-hour news coverage, FBI involvement, and a 6-figure reward fund, Essence Porter was still missing, still being ignored, still getting no media attention beyond those initial 30-second local news segments. 2 young women, both in their early 20s, both from the Philadelphia area, both disappeared around the same time. Both had families desperate to find them. But only one became a national story. Only one got the resources, the attention, the public pressure that dramatically increases the chances of being found. Why? The answer is uncomfortable, but we need to say it out loud. Madison Caldwell fit the narrative that American media has been trained to sell. Young, white, blonde, middle class, conventionally attractive. What criminologists and media critics call missing white woman syndrome. Essence Porter didn't fit that narrative. She was black. She was from a working class neighborhood. Her mother worked 2 jobs, not a corporate career. She went to a public university, not an elite private school. She worked at CVS, not a trendy marketing firm. And in the cruel calculus of American media, that made her less interesting, less relatable, less valuable, less worthy of being saved. This isn't about Madison Caldwell or Essence Porter specifically. This is about a pattern, a well-documented, extensively researched pattern of whose stories get told and whose get erased. Let me give you some names you've probably never heard. Relisha Rudd, 8 years old, disappeared from a homeless shelter in Washington, D.C. in 2014. Black, from a poor family, got minimal media coverage, still missing. Ashad Degree, 9 years old, walked out of her home in North Carolina in the middle of the night in 2000. Black, working class family, limited media coverage, still missing. Alexis Patterson, 7 years old, disappeared walking to school in Milwaukee in 2002. Black, the same year that Elizabeth Smart, a white girl from Utah, was kidnapped and received constant national media coverage until she was found. Alexis got almost nothing, still missing. Phoenix Colden, 23 years old, disappeared from St. Louis in 2011. Black, college student, her car was found abandoned. Minimal media coverage, still missing. Tamika Huston, 24 years old, disappeared from South Carolina in 2004. Black, the same year that Lassie Peterson, a white pregnant woman, disappeared and became one of the biggest media stories of the decade. Tamika's family had to beg for media attention. She was eventually found murdered. Stepha Henry, 22 years old, disappeared in Miami in 2007. Black, college student. Her case got some local coverage but nothing national, still missing. I could keep going. There are hundreds of names, thousands probably. Black women and girls who disappeared and whose stories never made it past local news if they got that far. And it's not just anecdotal. Researchers have studied this. They've quantified it. A study by the University of Wyoming analyzed media coverage of missing persons cases over a 10-year period. They found that white women received disproportionately more coverage than women of color. Specifically, white women who went missing were 4 times more likely to receive national media coverage than black women who went missing. Cases involving white victims averaged more than twice as many news stories as cases involving black victims. When black women did receive coverage, the stories were shorter, less detailed, and less likely to include sympathetic portrayals of the victim. Another study by Northwestern University found similar patterns. They analyzed over 5,000 missing persons cases and found that race was the strongest predictor of media coverage, stronger than age, gender, the circumstances of disappearance, or any other factor. The Gwen Ifill College of Media Innovation and Inclusion at Simmons University coined the term missing white woman syndrome to describe this phenomenon. It's not subtle. It's not ambiguous. It's a documented pattern of whose stories get told and whose get ignored. And it has real consequences. Media coverage increases public awareness. Public awareness leads to tips. Tips lead to leads. Leads lead to finding people. Studies have shown that cases with sustained media coverage are significantly more likely to be solved, not because the police work harder, but because public pressure and public tips provide crucial information. When the media ignores a case, it's not just about hurt feelings or unfair representation. It's literally about life and death. It's about whether resources get allocated, whether the FBI gets involved, whether reward funds get established, whether the case stays active or goes cold. Essence Porter's case went cold, not because there weren't leads to pursue, not because the police couldn't have done more, but because without media pressure, without public attention, without the constant drumbeat of coverage keeping her name in the headlines, it became just another file in an overworked detective's drawer. Meanwhile, Madison Caldwell got found in 9 days because her story was everywhere, because every tip line was flooded with calls, because law enforcement knew the whole country was watching. That's the power of media attention, and that's the cost of media silence. So why does this happen? Why do some victims get the full force of media attention while others get ignored? The answer is complex, rooted in both explicit bias and implicit assumptions about whose lives matter, whose stories are compelling, and whose victimhood is considered innocent. First, there's the obvious factor, racism. American media has always been disproportionately white. The decision makers, the editors, the producers, the executives who decide which stories get covered, are overwhelmingly white. And research shows that people are more likely to empathize with victims who look like them, who come from backgrounds similar to theirs. When a white editor looks at a case like Madison Caldwell's, they see their daughter, their niece, their friend. It's personal, it's scary, it feels urgent. When that same editor looks at a case like Essence Porter's, there's distance. She's from a neighborhood they've never been to, a background they don't understand, a community that feels foreign. The empathy doesn't kick in the same way. That's not necessarily conscious racism, though sometimes it is. More often, it's implicit bias, the unconscious assumptions we all carry about whose stories matter. Second, there's the economics of news media. News is a business, stories are products, and producers choose products they think will sell. Missing white woman stories sell. They've always sold. They fit a narrative that American audiences have been trained to respond to. Innocent young woman, suddenly in danger, family desperate for answers. It's tragic. It's relatable if you're white. It makes good television. Cases involving black women, especially black women from poor or working class backgrounds, don't fit that narrative as neatly. There's an assumption, often unspoken but always present, that black women from those neighborhoods might have been involved in something that led to their disappearance. That maybe they weren't as innocent. That maybe there's more to the story. This is where the intersection of racism and classism becomes crucial. When a middle-class white woman goes missing, the assumption is that something terrible happened to her. When a poor black woman goes missing, the assumption is often that she brought it on herself somehow. Media outlets will deny this, of course. They'll say they cover all missing persons cases equally, that race doesn't factor into their decisions. But the data doesn't lie. The pattern is too consistent, too overwhelming to be coincidence. Third, there's the way victims are portrayed. When white women go missing, media coverage focuses on their accomplishments, their potential, their bright futures. They're shown in graduation photos, vacation pictures, smiling with friends and family. The coverage humanizes them, makes audiences care about them as individuals. When black women go missing, on the rare occasions they get coverage, the portrayal is often different. Media outlets are more likely to mention criminal history, even if it's completely irrelevant to the disappearance. They're more likely to use less flattering photos. They're more likely to interview people who say ambiguous things about the victim's character or lifestyle. This matters because public sympathy drives attention, and attention drives resources. When a victim is portrayed sympathetically, people want to help. When a victim is portrayed with suspicion, people think maybe she deserved what happened. Essence Porter was portrayed, in the minimal coverage she received, as a nursing student working hard to make something of herself, which is true, which should have made her sympathetic. But even that framing carries an implication, that she was exceptional for her circumstances, that most people from North Philadelphia aren't like her. Madison Caldwell was portrayed as exactly what she was, a normal young woman living her life. No qualifiers, no surprise that someone like her would go to college or have a marketing job. It was simply expected. That difference between having to prove your worth and having it assumed, that's what we're talking about when we talk about privilege. And fourth, there's the issue of law enforcement response. Police departments are influenced by media coverage just like everyone else. When a case is all over the news, there's pressure to solve it. Resources get allocated. Task forces get formed. The case stays active. When a case gets no media coverage, there's no external pressure. Detectives have dozens or hundreds of other cases. Without public attention, without families who have the resources and connections to keep pushing, cases go cold. Essence Porter's mother, Patricia, didn't have connections to journalists or politicians. She didn't have money to hire private investigators or publicists. She had what she had: a mother's love, a mother's determination, and a community that cared. But that wasn't enough to get the media to pay attention. Madison Caldwell's family had connections. They knew how to navigate the media landscape. They could afford a publicist who knew how to pitch the story to national outlets. They had resources that amplified their daughter's disappearance. That's not a criticism of Madison's family. They did what any parent would do. They used every resource they had to find their daughter. That's what love looks like. But the fact that those resources were necessary in the first place, that finding a missing person depends partly on how well-connected and wealthy their family is. That's the systemic problem we're talking about. Let me tell you how Essence Porter's story ended. On August 3rd, 2023, 22 days after she disappeared, a group of teenagers found a body in an abandoned building in North Philadelphia. It was less than a mile from where Essence was last seen. The body was badly decomposed. It took 3 days to confirm through dental records that it was Essence Porter. The medical examiner determined she'd been murdered. Strangulation. She'd been dead for weeks, probably since the night she disappeared or shortly after. No one had been arrested. No suspects had been identified. The case remains unsolved. Her mother, Patricia Porter, held a funeral with the little money she had. The church was packed with Essence's friends, her classmates, her community. They wore purple, Essence's favorite color. They shared memories of her laugh, her ambition, her kindness. They cried for the future she'd never have, the patients she'd never heal, the difference she'd never make. The local news covered the funeral. One segment, 30 seconds, then moved on to other stories. There was no national coverage, no moment of silence, no vigils organized by strangers who'd followed her case, because most of the country never knew her case existed. The story of Essence Porter's murder received less media attention than Madison Caldwell's safe return. Think about that. A young black woman was murdered, and her death was less newsworthy than a white woman being found alive. That's not an accident. That's a choice made by editors and producers about whose lives matter, whose deaths deserve mourning, whose stories deserve to be told. And Essence is not alone. According to the Black and Missing Foundation, over 200,000 black women and girls have gone missing in the United States since 2014. Most of their cases receive little to no media coverage. Most remain unsolved. The FBI's National Crime Information Center reports that black people make up about 13% of the U.S. population, but account for over 34% of missing persons cases. That disproportionality alone should be a national emergency, should be front-page news, should be something we're talking about constantly. But we're not, because those missing people are mostly black women and girls from poor or working-class backgrounds, and we've decided as a society that their stories aren't worth telling. There's a cruel irony here. The very communities that are most likely to have members go missing are the communities least likely to receive media attention. Poor neighborhoods, black and brown communities, places where people are already vulnerable, already under-resourced, already dealing with systemic neglect. When someone goes missing from those communities, the media silence compounds the problem. No attention means no resources. No resources means cases go unsolved. Unsolved cases mean perpetrators face no consequences, and the cycle continues. Meanwhile, when someone from an affluent white community goes missing, the full force of American media, law enforcement, and public sympathy mobilizes to find them, which is how it should be for everyone. That's the point. That level of care, that level of urgency, that level of we will not rest until we find this person. That should be the standard for all missing persons, regardless of race or class. But it's not. And until it is, we're sending a message about whose lives have value and whose don't. Patricia Porter knows this. In an interview after Essence's funeral, she said something that broke my heart. If my daughter had been white, she'd still be alive. I know that. Everyone knows that. If she'd been white and blonde and from a nice neighborhood, every news station would have covered her story. Every cop in the city would have been looking for her. Someone would have seen something, said something, and she'd have been found before it was too late. But she was black. She was from North Philly. And so nobody cared enough to look. Nobody cared enough to tell her story. And now she's gone, and I'll never get her back. And the person who did this is still out there, because nobody thought my daughter's life was worth the effort. That's what media silence costs. Not just hurt feelings, not just unfair representation. Lives, actual human lives. So what do we do about this? How do we change it? First, we demand better from media outlets. We call them out when they ignore cases involving women of color while obsessing over cases involving white women. We ask why they're not covering certain stories. We pressure them to do better. Organizations like the Black and Missing Foundation and We Are Black and Missing are doing crucial work highlighting cases that mainstream media ignores. They deserve our support, our attention, our amplification. Second, we share stories like Essence Porter's. We say their names. We refuse to let them be erased. Every time a case like Madison Caldwell's dominates the news cycle, we ask, who else is missing right now that we're not hearing about? And we seek out those stories and share them. Third, we push for policy changes. Better protocols for how law enforcement handles missing persons cases, especially in vulnerable communities. More resources dedicated to cold cases. Independent oversight to ensure that cases aren't being deprioritized based on the race or class of the victim. And fourth, maybe most importantly, we examine our own biases. We ask ourselves, why do some stories grip us while others don't? Why do we scroll past certain missing persons posts while sharing others? What assumptions are we making about whose disappearance is tragic and whose is somehow expected or inevitable? Because this isn't just about media outlets. It's about all of us, about the collective choices we make regarding whose humanity we recognize and whose we ignore. Essence Porter deserved better. She deserved the same media attention, the same law enforcement resources, the same public sympathy that Madison Caldwell received. Not because Essence was more deserving. Both women deserved every possible effort to find them. But because the disparity in how their cases were handled reveals something ugly about American society. It reveals that we've decided some lives matter more than others, that some deaths are tragedies worth mourning, while others are statistics to be filed away, that some people deserve to be found while others can simply disappear. When she vanished, the cameras never came. The reporters never showed up. The national conversation never happened, because some stories we've decided don't sell. But Essence Porter had a story worth telling. She had dreams worth protecting. She had a life worth saving. And the fact that most of America never knew her name, never saw her face, never heard about her disappearance, that's not just a failure of media coverage. That's a moral failure, a collective failure to recognize the humanity of Black women, a failure to care as much about their lives as we care about others. Her name was Essence Porter. She was 24 years old. She wanted to be a pediatric nurse. She loved her mother, her siblings, her community. She worked hard, dreamed big, and tried to make a difference in the world. And when she disappeared, the cameras never came. Remember her name, share her story, and demand that the next time a Black woman goes missing, she gets the same coverage, the same resources, the same desperate search that white women receive automatically. Because some stories don't sell, that's a choice, and we can choose differently. We must choose differently. Because every missing person deserves to be found. Every family deserves answers. Every life deserves to matter. No exception, no excuses, no more silence. Say her name, Essence Porter, and say the names of all the others who disappeared while the cameras looked away. They deserved better. They all deserved better. And until we give them that, until we care as much about Black women's lives as we care about white women's lives, we haven't just failed them. We've failed ourselves.